Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and today I want to dive into a topic that's kind of been going around quite a bit over the last couple weeks, but I want to look at it from a completely different angle, something that I haven't really seen too many people talking about, because the topic, as it often has morphed into something entirely different from what it started as. So what I'm talking about is the article in Forbes 2 weeks ago discussing the difficulty of Sekiro and whether or not it needs to have a easy mode. Now, the ironic thing about this is I actually put out a video about that very topic the day before it came out, discussing about the difficulty level of the game and how it's not actually as difficult as people say it is, but that's another topic for another day. What I want to look at it today is not to question whether or not the game actually needs an easy mode or anything of that, because like I said, the conversation has shifted and now it is turning, as it often does, into another conversation between games journalists and games media and developers versus gamers. And that is, as absurd as it is, that is exactly what is happening once again. Because as happens every single time From Software releases a game, whether it be one of the Dark Souls games or Bloodborne or now Sekiro, it doesn't seem to matter. You're always going to get these articles and these hot takes from people saying, oh, this game needs an easy mode because, you know, I'd love to play it. I love the art design and the music and everything, but I just can't get into the difficulty. And it is a constant issue where you see people, a lot of times games journalists, saying that they can't play the game. And of course, this always leads to some back and forth where gamers make fun of the journalists who say that they need an easy mode, and then they get all bent out of shape about it. But a couple of things struck me this week when I was thinking about this, because I didn't just want to rush and put out a video, because like I said, I had already done a video in the similar vein just 2 weeks ago. So I wanted to look at this from a different angle and sort of absorb the argument from both sides. And what I found overall is the argument is kind of severely lacking on both sides. You have one side that is hanging on the artistic vision of Miyazaki and the team over at From Software and saying, well, this is how they want the game, therefore this is how it has to be. And I think that's actually kind of a weak and silly argument. And on the other side, you have people now leaning into what I think is an equally silly argument, leaning on the accessibility angle, that saying that, oh, well, people that are disabled can't play the game because of the button inputs might be too difficult, and so they should put in a... I've seen people suggesting that they put in a one-hit kill mode or infinite health or everything. And at some point, it's like, what do you think a game is? Do you think that every game needs to have all sorts of sort of systems in place so that every single person on the entire planet can play it? Is that really what you want developers wasting their time doing? Now, I understand that there is a segment of people who need help, and whether that be colorblind measures or the adaptive controllers that Microsoft and Xbox have with their system that they worked on, that they've been hyping up for the last year or so. Whether it be stuff like that, or whether they're talking about just having a difficulty slider where you can turn everything down to easy and just go through the game. Well, the situation is that if you want to talk about accessibility, that is an entirely different argument from talking about game difficulty or accessibility from a gameplay standpoint. If you want to talk about people who need specialized controllers, that is an entirely different. And now what I've seen is people on Twitter and people pontificating even on a lot of the YouTube channels on the people who have the highly produced sets, you know, the bubble of games journalists out in Southern California that all is very incestuous. They all know each other out there. They all have each other's backs. And I see that crowd of people is now turning this into sort of trying to be white knights for the disabled gamer community, as if that was ever the purpose of the article to begin with. And now they've just expanded it, and I see them making claims that gamers are going out and attacking disabled people. I have not seen any of that anywhere, yet they're using this, again, to browbeat gamers. You know, we're evil, we're entitled, all of this nonsense. We are just the worst people on the planet, and I don't see why this conversation has morphed into this just because some people wanted to poke some fun at the writer of the article, as is wont to do when they complain that a game is too hard. If you complain that any game is too hard, people are going to make fun of you. That is just the nature of the internet. It doesn't matter if it's a From Software game or Cuphead or any of that. And what's funny is, you see a lot of games that don't have easy modes. They might have difficulty sliders, but what about all these games as a service title? There's no easy mode to the Division 2. There's just the default setting, normal mode. If the game's too hard for you, and some people have said that it's a little bit hard for them, especially if they want to play solo, some people are having a tough time with it. There's no way to set that game to easy mode. People don't complain about that. If you want to do a raid in Destiny, there's no easy mode in that. Yet people will sit there and try to do a raid and die over and over again to the same boss for hours on end, just like you would do in a From Software game, and no one sits there and says, man, I wish this had an easy mode so I can beat the raid. No, people go into a raid expecting a challenge and wanting to overcome a difficult challenge, both for the experience and the reward, but mainly to say that they did it, to go through the game and be like, yes, I beat this challenge. I did this. And that is why people play these games. Because you want to know what something else I found interesting is, whenever gamers try to make a demand from a developer or a publisher, we're always called entitled. But how come when a games journalist does the exact same thing, they are roundly supported by all the games media? I don't see anyone in the media calling Dave Taylor entitled, the writer of the article. No one's coming out and saying, oh, Dave, you're so entitled. How could you have this opinion, make this demand of these developers? But that's one guy's opinion, and they're all rallying behind him. But when literally millions of gamers say the same thing to a developer, no, we don't want this, oh, we do want that, well, we're screamed at and called entitled. We're the vocal minority. But here you have literally one guy writes an article, and now they're calling for a revolution for accessibility in gaming. And it's gotten to the point now where everything is just shaded by ideology, and it's just gotten ridiculous. Because the fact is, you're going to get made fun of if you're making a claim that a game is too difficult, when multiple people in just a couple weeks since the game has been out have streamed themselves beating the entire game in under 40 minutes from start to finish. People have beaten the last boss in under 40 minutes. So making this claim that the game is just simply too difficult, that it has to have an easy mode, when people who just got their hands on it have beaten the entire thing in under 40 minutes, you have got to be kidding me. The game is challenging, yes, but there's lots of games that are challenging. It should also be pointed out that all these games by From Software actually start out by default on easy mode. The games only get harder. If you beat the game once, it gets harder. You beat it again, it gets harder again. And Sekiro has an option where you get to a certain point in the game and you can ring a bell and make it harder. Same thing happened in Dark Souls 2. You could do something in the game to make it harder in the game. You could make it harder on yourself. The game starts out in easy mode. Just because it might be too difficult for someone's sensibilities, or they don't want to put in the time to quote-unquote get good. I know that is a cliche, but anyone who's actually taken the time to beat these games will tell you that it's actually not a mocking insult. It's actually a necessity of the game, is to learn the game and actually become better at it. And that's the bottom line. If you don't want to put in the time, that's one thing, but don't call on the game to change itself for you, because we've been told many, many times by these same games journalists and talking heads at the mainstream sites and channels that by doing that, that is showing gamer entitlement. So I would hate to see games journalists go down that same dark and terrible road. The fact of the matter is, with games journalism, the issue is that they don't have an audience of casual people. The people who go out of their way to read any of these articles are enthusiasts. They have an enthusiast audience, and they don't seem to realize that. So oftentimes, the articles that they write, while maybe have useful information that the general public isn't privy to yet, these people write as though they are more informed or more knowledgeable about games than their audience, and oftentimes they are woefully ill-informed and not as intelligent when it comes to understanding games or game systems or games history. Even the people who play games, not even all games journalists are really gamers. Some of them just fell into games journalism because they wanted to be a journalist, and that's the only type of job they can get. So some of these people only play these games because they have to. And even the people who are avid gamers have to get this through their heads, that the only people who seek out their material, it's not the mainstream masses that they're trying to convert. It's only enthusiasts who are at least as knowledgeable as many of the people writing the same articles, if not more knowledgeable. So they need to stop treating us like we're the idiots and understand that we are at the very least their peers a lot of times when it comes to overall knowledge about gaming. Like I said, they may be privy to private information that we don't have, but that only means that they have information that is private that we don't have. That doesn't mean that they have more knowledge about games that are released or anything else like that, but they talk to us and treat us like they do, which is not the case. They need to get that out of their head entirely, because it's frankly ridiculous. We want to go to them for information that we don't have. We don't need to get the guilt trip and the lectures while we're at it. And until that happens, we're going to continue to have this conflict, backed mainly, I think, by games journalists. Gamers aren't the ones who declared war here, but it's games journalists, and they continue doing it now. And the fact that this has exploded into another situation between gamers versus games journalists just because of one article about something that's been talked about for the better part of a decade is, are these games too difficult? It's my stance that they're not. You just have to take the time to learn. And what you've seen in this video, what you've seen throughout this entire video, is me getting stomped repeatedly by the same boss. Now, this is just a few snippets of me dying. There's many more that I didn't record. But at the end, when you finally beat the boss, then you will understand what these games are about. And you would understand that an easy mode doesn't help it in any way. If people don't want to take the journey, that's fine. But don't turn this into an argument about anything else. That's it from me, Coach Toolshed. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Please subscribe if you want to stay in tune with the channel headed forward. And as always, keep it turned to 11.